Hello, welcome to today's webinar on the Hong Kong U-Cambridge Undergraduate Recruitment Scheme. We sometimes call it the Hong Kong U-Cambridge Track. My name is Ian Holliday. I'm Vice President for Teaching and Learning at Hong Kong U. And I have with me, both here at Hong Kong U and joining us from Cambridge, several colleagues who are involved in the scheme, who are going to brief you on the core components of the scheme and give you a sense of what you need to do to apply for it. We also have some students who have experience of this scheme who can tell you what it's been like to join the scheme and learn at both Hong Kong U and Cambridge. We launched this scheme with Cambridge 8 years ago. So the first cohort joined the Cambridge track, the Hong Kong U Cambridge track, in 2012. At that point, it was just a scheme in engineering. It's subsequently been extended to computer science within engineering. And from this year, we're adding in natural sciences and at Hong Kong U, the Faculty of Science. So it's become a much broader scheme, enabling students to study across engineering and science, and in the process to gain 3 degrees in 5 years. So it's a 2+3 scheme, 2 years at Hong Kong U, 3 years at Cambridge. And in that time, students will gain a bachelor's degree from the University of Hong Kong, so either a Bachelor of Engineering or a Bachelor of Science. And then moving on to Cambridge, they will gain a Bachelor of Arts, which might sound a bit strange, but that's one of Cambridge's oddities, I guess, and also a Master of Science or a Master of Engineering, all, as I said, within 5 years. We recruit absolutely the best students, as you would imagine. So if you are one of the top students in Hong Kong, an elite student who's looking at Hong Kong U, looking at the best programs that we can offer, this may well be the program for you. Joining us in Hong Kong, Professor Edmund Lam is Associate Dean for Teaching and Learning in the Faculty of Engineering. So he understands the engineering components of the scheme. Professor Alice Wong is Associate Dean for Teaching and Learning in the Faculty of Science. So she will understand the science components and the natural science components as well at Cambridge. And we also have, I don't know the student member's name.
Rupert.
Rupert, yes, we have Rupert from engineering who's joining us. Science, sorry. Science. And then Guo is joining us from engineering.
Yes.
And then finally in Cambridge, we have Professor David Cardwell, who is PVC for Planning and Strategy at the University of Cambridge. And frankly, is the godfather of this scheme. He's a great friend of Hong Kong U. He comes every year, COVID permitting now, but he's been coming every year to interview students, to see who can make it onto the Hong Kong U Cambridge track from our initial cohort of students joining the program. And really, he's been the mastermind behind this program over the past decade. So it's great to have David here with us right now today. And he is going to speak next. So, David, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Thanks for that introduction. So what I really want to do is to describe the Cambridge aspect of this scheme and how that fits into the overall management and aims of what we're trying to deliver. And to say something about what you can expect if you come to study in Cambridge and how that kind of benefits you long term. I think the first thing I want to say is that this is a unique scheme. The University of Cambridge famously doesn't offer joint degrees with any other institution. We've had year abroad schemes, and for example, in modern languages, that's part of the curriculum, but it only awards its own degrees. So this isn't a joint degree scheme, it's a partnership. And it's structured in such a way that Hong Kong U Cambridge, but more importantly, the young people participating get an enormous amount out of it. And the unique nature of it means that students who take what would ordinarily be 4-year courses in Cambridge study for 5 years, as you've heard. But students who take courses that would ordinarily be 3 years, like computer science or natural sciences, biological, do a 2+2 scheme. And at the end of it, they are alumni of both Hong Kong U and Cambridge. They have a number of degrees, as Ian has outlined, which again makes the scheme unique. But more than anything else, it makes them extremely employable. We've got Southeast Asia and Europe basically as a foothold of two world-leading institutions and have degrees from both of them makes a lot of sense. I think by doing 2 years at Hong Kong U as well, it means the overall cost of education compared to studying exclusively in the UK is very competitive. So students are not disadvantaged financially. And now the scheme is open to a broad range of Hong Kong U students. I think we can thank an enormous number of people who've put effort into making this program work. It's not been straightforward to get two world-leading universities to agree to collaborate in this way. And as I said, Cambridge only collaborates with HKU like this. There are no other universities that we have this particular scheme with. But really, the individuals that have made it work are the students. And all the planning and all the aims and aspirations are fine. But if you just don't generate the right students, then the scheme will collapse. So I think moving forward, anybody who benefits from this scheme owes an awful lot to the students over the last 8 years who've made it such a success. And it has been a real success. When we look at Cambridge, our courses are extremely academic. So quite often students will apply to study at Cambridge to acquire experience in courses that are irrelevant. So, for example, our engineering course is 2 years of very general engineering. So you can't decide that, well, actually, I want to be a civil engineer and I don't want to do electrical. At Cambridge, you can't do that. So it appeals to a certain type of engineer in terms of engineering. And that's very compatible with the course curricula at Hong Kong U. So one slight area of confusion in the past has been, in Cambridge, computer science is a very different course to engineering. So if you wanted to study computer science, you wouldn't apply to engineering. At Hong Kong U, computer science is incorporated within engineering. And in the early days, that did cause some confusion. So it's important to understand that if you are applying for engineering, then you will be interviewed for engineering. If you want to do computer science, then you should apply for computer science, and both are acceptable. And personally, I'm delighted that we're extending the number of subjects that are available this year to the sciences. That just tells you just how successful the scheme's been over the years and the high level of credibility. But I have to say, the standard of students over the past 8 years has been extraordinary. Typically, Cambridge, and let's just look at engineering for a moment, receives 7 applications per place. So for every single student we admit, there are 6 students that we turn down. Over the years, for engineering alone, the success ratio for applicants from Hong Kong U has been about 1 in 2. It's extraordinary. It's 4 times better than the university average overall. And there's a very good reason for that. And the reason is that Hong Kong U put a lot of effort into explaining the scheme so students understand what they're applying into. They're very carefully selected before they get to Hong Kong U to begin with. They're then further selected. Hong Kong U really understands what the students will be doing in Cambridge, and therefore can advise and make sure that the best and most appropriate students apply. Because at the end of the day, we want the students to be successful. If we admit a student who struggles or has a bad time or doesn't enjoy the experience or doesn't come out with a good degree, then collectively we fail that student. So it's in everybody's interest that the standards are high and that the right students are admitted. So in admitting students, Cambridge looks at a number of things. Obviously, we interview students, but it's not just about the interview. Most people think it's only about the interview. It isn't. We look at your motivation for wanting to study at Cambridge, and that comes through very clearly from the information that we get from Hong Kong U, because we share that information. We look at your academic record to date, wherever your education was, wherever your domestic education, if you're a Hong Kong national or you're a Chinese national or you're Indian, if you're studying at Hong Kong U, that's a qualification to be considered for this scheme. We look at what your lecturers and your faculty say about you. You'll be required to take a test. Every student who's admitted, at least for the subjects that are part of this scheme, will have to take a Cambridge administered test, and that is at the beginning of November. And then finally, there's the interview. So we look at a raft of different elements and levers to understand whether you're going to perform well on the course. And if you do, then it's in your interest to be admitted. As Ian said, I personally do the interviews in engineering. We're extending to natural sciences this year, and we have a colleague who will be doing those interviews. So there'll be now 2 of us. We typically shortlist round about between 13 and 15 students in computer science and engineering, and similarly this year in the natural sciences. And of those students, it's about 50% of those that are admitted. Obviously, with natural sciences, this is an experiment for the first time this year, so we have no statistics to give you. But I'm expecting about 1 in 2 offers per applicant to be maintained. And I think that's healthy for both Cambridge and for Hong Kong U. What we're looking for are students with academic potential. So when I'm evaluating a student, of which the interview is part, I'm asking myself, are they going to get a good degree? And for me, a good degree is an upper second class honours, which is the second highest degree Cambridge awards. It goes first, upper second, lower second, and then we don't even think about what happens below lower second. So unless I think you're going to get at least a 2-1, I don't consider it in your best interest to go to Cambridge. It's much better to carry on at Hong Kong U and really capitalise on the learning that you'll have had in your first 2 years and come out with a world-leading degree there. So it is a balance. We aren't offering any fast-track route into Cambridge. The assessment process for Hong Kong U students is exactly the same as all of the students that apply to Cambridge. We don't ring-fence places. If you're good enough, you're going to be made an offer. If we consider that it's not in your best interest, then you won't be made an offer. Students usually choose a college, and the college is always an area of much discussion. Cambridge is slightly odd for many reasons, but one reason is that the university doesn't admit its students. That's a task for the colleges. And we have 24 undergraduate colleges. Students choose their college and they apply to that college. That college then is responsible for processing the application and deciding which offers it's going to make. And then students turn up at the university in the relevant department on the first day of term, and often the head of department only knows which students he or she will be educating 2 days before term begins. So in engineering, for example, that's 340 students each year. On average, around about 12 to 15 students per college, all descending every day on the Department of Engineering for exactly the same education. So the point about college choice is don't agonize over it. At the end of the day, you will get exactly the same education whichever college you study at. You'll get the same education, you'll get the same degree, you'll sit the same examinations, you'll get the same example papers, you'll do the same practicals, but you'll do it in college-based groups. Cambridge has one big advantage in that there is some small group, what we call supervisions in Cambridge, in their colleges. So students with a supervision partner, twice a week, we'll sit down with a supervisor and we'll go over what's topical for that week. So I supervise electrical engineering. So next week I'll be looking at induction motors for second year students. We have an example paper and we'll be going through that. And that's very good for students. It means you have to prepare for it, but it means that if you've got specific issues or problems you want to discuss, then they're focused on you. It's not a big group that we're teaching. It's 1 to 2 with a senior member of the department or the college. So the first message is don't agonize too much over your college choice. There are no bad Cambridge colleges. They're all outstanding. And you'll find yourself in a community there that will make an impression on you for the rest of your life. If you can't decide or you can't choose a college, you can make an open application. And if you make an open application, the university will allocate a college to you, and it'll do it on a statistical basis. So we can't predict year on year which colleges are going to be popular for which subject. But when we have all the applications in, we can make sure that the applications are distributed more uniformly by using the number of students and making open application. I would emphasize that the college doesn't care how it arrives at your application. When I interview, I will not be talking to you about why you chose your college and why and what were the underlying reasons. Choice of college is absolutely nothing to do with your academic potential. And as part of the interview, I will only be focusing on determining your academic potential. So one thing I'd like to say possibly before closing is that unlike US universities, we only evaluate students in the specific context of the subject for which they've applied. So if you're applying to read physical natural sciences, the interview and the rest of the assessment will focus on your potential to do well in natural sciences. What amazes me when I open Cambridge applications is whatever the students who are applying to us have done, they've done extraordinary well. So, quite often if it's a martial art, it's a black belt, and you have to be very careful how you interview those students, of course. If it's music, it's often grade 8, and that's extremely demanding if you know about music grade 8. If it's a sport, it's usually done at a very high level. But I have to say, we don't take that into account when we make offers. There is an indirect benefit that you're bound to be able to communicate better, you're bound to be more confident, you're bound to be able to cope with stress better. So there is an indirect benefit, but ultimately the offer will be based on whether we think you're going to do well in your course of study, and nothing else matters. Your religion, your nationality, your gender, your wealth, it's all absolutely irrelevant. I'm only looking at academic potential when I make my assessment of candidates from wherever they are, whether they're regular applicants, UK applicants, or part of the Hong Kong U scheme. So I guess in finishing up, I'd just like to say that my view is that we've evolved over the last 8 years a world-leading scheme. It's completely unique. Cambridge and Hong Kong U have got an outstanding collaborative working relationship. I'm also a distinguished visiting professor at Hong Kong U, so I genuinely represent both institutions. It is a fantastic opportunity to the successful candidates, but you need to understand the standard is extremely high. You'll have to work extremely hard, but your predecessors have performed outstandingly well. And I would argue probably the best cohort admitted to any subject in the history of the university. And that is something I don't say lightly. So I think with that, Ian, I'll probably stop. I'm sure there'll be time for questions later.
Great, thanks very much, David. We'll have some input from Edmund. So Edmund, just as a reminder, Associate Dean for Teaching and Learning in the Faculty of Engineering here at Hong Kong U. So Edmund, over to you.
All right, thank you. I believe there's some PowerPoints I can show. So I know Professor Cadwell is always very thorough about explaining the scheme. So what I'd like to do is just a one-page summary. Yes, so just a one-page summary, and I like numbers, so I just put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One unique program, as you just heard, Hong Kong U and Cambridge put together this scheme. It involves 2 top universities, right? And I put down the ranking, but it's much more than the ranking. You can look at the graduates, look at how the impact to the world that the universities are having. And then practically, I think many of you would be interested to know how you can get in. And at Hong Kong U, we have 3 different JUPAS codes that you can choose from. One is what we call the main program for Bachelor of Engineering. And then the other one is called Engineering Science. And the third one is Biomedical Engineering. Right? So if you want to get into this scheme, the first thing that you should do is to put us in your A1 choice into one of these JUPAS programs. Right? Now, you probably ask, well, what happened next? How do I indicate my interest if I pick these codes? This year, engineering will be interviewing students in December. So when you come, you can indicate your interest, and we will have some ways of perhaps giving you advice. Right? But what if you have not made up your mind at that point, but want to indicate or become interested afterwards? The real important part is after you get into Hong Kong U Engineering, we will in September, in your first month here, we'll give you more details and you can indicate your interest, and we'll have the screening test, and then we have shortlist candidates, and then we'll work with each individual shortlisted candidates about applying to Cambridge through the scheme, right? So that's the first thing at this point you need to remember is how you get in through these JUPAS codes. You heard about many degrees, and sometimes we said you get 3 degrees, sometimes we said you get 4 degrees. The reason is that you get the Bachelor of Engineering degree from Hong Kong U, and you get the Bachelor of Arts and the Master of Engineering from Cambridge. But because you get the Bachelor of Arts, Cambridge also will award you the Master of Arts. So sometimes I like to say 4. But in any case, it's a very good deal. You think about it, usually you spend 4 years, you get 1 degree, and now you get, I don't know, 3 or 4 degrees. And then these are professional degrees, meaning that your Hong Kong U degree is accredited by the Hong Kong Institution of Engineers, meaning that you can work in Hong Kong as a professional engineer. And similarly, for the UK part, if after graduation you decided you want to work in the UK, you could. You are also an accredited engineer there. And in fact, the engineering network worldwide have all these reciprocal arrangements so that even if you decide maybe you want to work in Europe or America or some other countries, through these professional agreements, you can actually also be professionally accredited. You'll also be professional engineers in many, many countries, right? And then 5 years. This is a simplistic view saying that the first 2 years you're at Hong Kong U, and then 3rd, 4th, and 5th year you're at Cambridge. I said this is simplistic because it doesn't mean that after year 2 we'll forget about you. We'll say, okay, now you're at Cambridge. No, in fact, we consider these group of students both Hong Kong U and Cambridge students. In fact, in the earlier cohorts, some of the students who have gone on to study at Cambridge actually come back and spend some time in the summer doing research here. And also, I'll show you some pictures. This, thanks to Professor Cardwell, he arranged a very nice trip for us to go to Cambridge last year, and we visited with the Dean of Engineering and myself and 2 other Associate Dean of Engineering. We visited a few colleges. We had dinner in a very nice college with the former, some of them have already graduated from the earlier cohorts. Some are current students at Cambridge, right? You also see another picture with the Dean of Engineering and Professor Caldwell, and then the Vice Chancellor at Cambridge. And then the top right, you can see those mostly those are the graduates. They are, because we were having lunch at London, and they talk about their life after finishing their studies at Hong Kong U and Cambridge, and we had a very enjoyable time. So I hope that some of you will get into this program, and someday maybe we'll have some of these very interesting, very nice meals, chatting together and all that. So thank you. And now I pass to Professor.
Thanks very much, Edmund. So again, Professor Alice Wong is Associate Dean for Teaching and Learning in the Faculty of Science at Hong Kong U. And she's going to explain the new component that we're adding this year, which is a science track within the Hong Kong U Cambridge scheme. Alice.
Thank you, Ian. So first of all, for science, we are very honored and delighted this year to join the Hong Kong Cambridge dual degree program this year. And we hope to leverage on or build on the success from engineering, learn from their experiences, and hope that to make this program dual degree even better. So for science, we have done the selection slightly different on the Hong Kong U side. So all students, they have to be within the Young Scientist scheme, and then they would select whether they have a check like box whether they would want to go for the CambridgeTrack. So for the CambridgeTrack, it will be for selected young scientist scheme participants. So as Edmund mentioned about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'll explain a little bit. For science, it will be 1, 2, 4 and 5 only, because we have only one admission code, the JUPAS code, and that is 6901. So for the Young Scientist Scheme, which we have for about 10 years, it is an early research experience for our very outstanding science students. So for these students, we guarantee them with the local research fellowship, overseas research fellowship, international exchange, or visiting summer study programs in elite university worldwide. They also have the opportunity to attend scientific conferences. They have a research mentor, and then they get enrolled in our Frontiers of Science Honor Seminar, which they get exposure to interdisciplinary research topics from different members and teachers, professors in our faculty. They get stipend for their research activities as well as entrance scholarship. So for the Young Scientist scheme, they will start doing research even in their first year, which is a little bit an extra opportunity, additional opportunity than other undergraduates in our faculty. They get opportunities to do a second summer research fellowships, a local one or an international one. And then in their third year, we encourage them to go for exchange or visiting or summer studies. And then the final year, they would do their final year projects and attend international conferences. So these are some of the exchange opportunities, summer studies that we had specifically reserved for our Young Scientist Scheme students. So how to join the Young Scientist Scheme? In a way, how to join the CambridgeTrack, that you have to have your DSE score, the best 5, to be at least 35. And then you will be automatically accepted to the YSS with no interview at all. So we will also select a small group number of non-JUPAS applicants to join the YSS as well. So when you join, you have a checkbox to indicate whether you would like to join the CambridgeTrack. So for the CambridgeTrack, as I've mentioned, that it will be one JUPAS code only, and you can do 2 or 3 years, 2 years at Hong Kong U, 2 or 3 years at Cambridge, to get a maximum of 4 degrees: the Bachelor of Science from Hong Kong U, Bachelors of Arts from Cambridge, Master of Science from Cambridge, as well as Master of Arts from Cambridge as well. For those who either cannot, because of academically they are not accepted for the MSci in their 5th year, or for certain subjects, there is no MSci available at Cambridge, they will do a 2+2 and getting a maximum of 3 degrees. And those students, we also lay out their learning pathway of how they can make up the credit difference here at Hong Kong U. So here is the general curriculum layout, which these informations are all on our faculty website if you are interested. So with all the details of how many credits you have to complete at Hong Kong U, and then how much you can transfer from Cambridge, including those doing an MSci or not. So as I've mentioned, how do you enroll in CambridgeTrack? First of all, you have to select 6901, our Faculty of Science Broad Science program. And then you have to get DSE score 35 or above to admit into the YSS program. You have to put us in band A, otherwise we will not consider that. And then for these CambridgeTrack students, we also require you a higher math standard. So remember, in your JUPAS, you have to have M1 or M2, and with a level 5 in your English language. For those doing non-JUPAS exams, the IB1, we require you to have high-level math. For the GCE A-level math and further math. So these qualifications are important. So this is just our first cohort of applicants for this year. We hope that among these 20 students, we'll be able to successfully get some being accepted by Cambridge. So as you can see that we have students from DSE, IB, GCE A-level, and Gaokao. And we have some of them with very top scores. For the DSE, the range is 35 to 42.5, IB 42 and 43, and GCE A-level is 3A star to 4A star. So how do we support our students in doing that? Later on, Rupert will share with you more. But basically, is we will help to review the students' personal statement. We will help the students to prepare their reference letter, which by this time they have all been submitted already. And then we are planning in November, we'll do a mock interviews. With our Hong Kong U professors, including some at the Cambridge alumni, which they have experience in the interview. And then we will also providing them with updates and useful resources from time to time. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Alice. Now we move to Zoom and to Guo, who is a student engineer. Guo, please.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Yang Guo. I'm a year 2 student majoring in computer engineering. I was shortlisted as one of the candidates in Hong Kong U Cambridge scheme last year, and I got the conditional offer from Cambridge, luckily. Today, I'm going to talk about my experience in the scheme, as well as how the faculty have been supporting me. I'll start with the Hong Kong U Cambridge scheme process. The candidates were selected by the results of the screening tests held by the faculty. To be honest, when I became one of the candidates, I felt excited but didn't know what to do, as I had no idea about how to apply for Cambridge. And then the faculty came to offer me help. I remembered well that it was September 13th when we had the first meeting discussing the following events. At that day, I first met with other candidates and Mr. Derek Ho, who has helped us a lot. I volunteered to be the coordinator, responsible for connecting students better. After that, we candidates were having a difficult time dealing with application forms, midterm tests, Cambridge pre-interview assessments, and the following interview. At the same time, we received much support. The faculty had planned to host several academic advising sessions, covering mock-up interview, curriculum requirements, etc. Professor Edmund Lam acted as our referee. He was the director of the scheme last year, and he made many efforts to guide us in our studies. After months of study, we were told to attend the interview. That day, I dressed formally and I felt a little nervous. Mr. Drake Ho encouraged me when I walked into the room. The faculty had prepared a huge HD TV used for interviews. I felt like Professor Caldwell was sitting right in front of me during the interview. The results were released at the beginning of the second semester, and we have been working hard so far to meet the offer conditions. Mr. Daniel Au came to help us this year. There are special arrangements like a summer research internship. We needed to contact professors in private, applying to do research in specific areas concerning our majors. In this manner, we developed the ability to do research and prepared ourselves better for courses in Cambridge. In conclusion, there are many challenges and also opportunities in the scheme. While under pressure from the competition, I feel lucky to have a clear goal and have many instructors. I am looking forward to further studying in both HKU and Cambridge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guo. And then finally, Rupert from the Faculty of Science at Hong Kong. Rupert, please.
Maybe I should wait the camera. So hi everyone, I'm Rupert Kwan, a Year 1 student in the Bachelor of Science program. And I'm proud to be in the first cohort of the Hong Kong U CambridgeTrack in the natural science. So first and foremost, why I would choose the CambridgeTrack. So basically, in my secondary school, I joined quite a lot of science competitions, and programs, and since then I built up my science interest and my confidence in science. And it is at that time I decided I would like to pursue my future career in science. And when I was told that Hong Kong U is having a track that allows us to go to Cambridge, as well as having the opportunity provided in the Young Scientist scheme, I just like, wow, and choose it directly in my GPS. So maybe you like to know more about how to prepare yourself in this scheme. So soon after your DSE, you'll be invited by the Hong Kong U Science to have a math test and an interview. And some selected students, as just Professor Alice Wong just mentioned, will have a conditional offer on it. So first thing you have to do is to do well in your DSE, so you can fulfill the conditional offer. You will have like a few weeks of time after the DSE to prepare for your math test and the interview. And in that period of time, I think you can do more math regularly to keep your math knowledge and your sense in your math fresh and familiar, so you can do well in the math test. Also, in the math test, you should expect something that you have never seen before. So I think it's a good idea to learn more outside the curriculum. The interview will come shortly after the math test, but it is not that academic like the Cambridge interview. And the questions are more general and focus more on your experience and your interest. So after you've admitted into the Hong Kong U and get into this track, you also have to pass through the admission test and the interview by Cambridge, which I haven't gone through, but I can share with you how to prepare it. So as mentioned by Professor Cardwell, the interview by Cambridge is more academic and more specific to your field of interest in science. So maybe it's very important for you to be familiar with your field of interest in science and maybe learn more outside the DSE curriculum, which could help you a lot in both the test and the interview. So for me, I do that by participating in those science-related competitions and programs in my secondary school, but it's not the only way. So I think you will have to find the best way that suits you most. However, for the Form 6 students that are going to have the DSE soon, I believe that you should focus on your DSE first and start the preparation during the long summer holiday after DSE. You have plenty of time in that holiday, and I'm sure you will have enough of time to prepare for the test and interview. So if I think that in that time, in the summer holiday, I believe you can self-studying on the A-level syllabus or with some university textbook to know more knowledge in your field of interest in science. So lastly, I believe this track is very beneficial to me and to those who would like to pursue a science career in your future, because you can study in the world famous universities, both the Cambridge and the Hong Kong U. And you also have the opportunity provided by the YSS scheme, such as to research fellowship programs in your year 1 and year 2 summer, and international scientific conference opportunity, and so on. Moreover, just like any of the exchange programs, you live in Cambridge for quite a long time, for 2 to 3 years, and you can experience the life and the culture there. So here's my sharing today. I hope you can understand more on this track, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Rupert. So now it's over to everybody who's joining us for this webinar. For any questions you may have for the colleagues who are with me here in Hong Kong, or for Professor David Cardwell in Cambridge, or even for the students who are participating or hoping to participate in the scheme. We have about 15 or 20 minutes for Q&A. So we start with a question from science: how can I indicate my interest in the Cambridge track? Alice?
Yeah, thank you, Ian. So as we have talked, first of all, you have to select 6901, and then you have to put it in your band A. So in that case, the faculty will then contact you, and then you can indicate if you want to join the Cambridge track.
Okay, thank you very much. So very straightforward in science. 6901, and do very well in your DSE.
Yes,
and you will have a chance to enroll in YSS and then move on up through the Cambridge track. Again, for science, around when will the admissions test and the interview be conducted by Hong Kong U?
Yeah, for the Hong Kong U one, as Rupert mentioned, we'll do it in the summer, so around May or June, after you finish your DSE.
Okay, thank you very much. And then for Edmund, engineering and also the computer science tracks, who's eligible to apply for the Hong Kong U Cambridge undergraduate recruitment scheme in engineering and computer science?
In the engineering and computer science side, we are making it available to essentially all who come in through the free JUPAS codes. Of course, every year, actually, a large number of students indicate their interest, and I think there's no surprise there. But they have to then pass the screening test. So it's really the screening test that helps us shortlist the candidates in the engineering and computer science.
Okay, thanks. This is a question for Rupert, who is, as you know, a year one student in the Faculty of Science at Hong Kong U. I'm still considering if I should do science or research. How do you determine to pursue science and enroll in the YSS and this Cambridge track?
So basically, I choose to apply for this for the Bachelor of Science mostly because of my interest. Because I believe that if I want to do well in something, I will need to have the interest in doing something, and so I would be more happier, and be more successful in that.
Okay, thank you very much. A question for Edmund relating to the computer science component of the engineering track. How many students each year can qualify for admission to Cambridge through computer science?
Right. The short answer is it really varies. Computer science is a very popular discipline, I think, worldwide in the past few years, with all these development in AI and many areas where computing has shown enormous power. And therefore, computer science programs is difficult to get in, I have to say that. So it really depends. Every year we have students applying through this. And from our side, when we do the shortlisting, we don't have a particular quota for engineering and computer science, because at Hong Kong U Engineering, we actually cover both. And each year, I think we have roughly maybe 10 or so in each side. And then it's really depending on the performance and the competitiveness on the Cambridge side to see how many gets in.
Okay, we have another question for Edmund. It's a student who's sitting the DSE in 2021, so is in Form 6 right now, I guess, and is asking about joining the scheme if they missed the deadline for application to engineering in 2020.
Well, if you are sitting for DSE in 2021, that means you are currently going to apply for Hong Kong U right now. So as I said, apply through those JUPAS codes right now and indicate your interest. And then when you come in at Hong Kong U in September 2021, go through the screening test, hopefully get shortlisted, and then we'll proceed on the interview and the whole procedures. Right.
Okay, there's a question for Professor Cardwell. What kinds of, I don't know if you want to answer this one, David. What kinds of questions will you be raising in the interviews? Will it be tech-related questions or much more general discussion for students applying to the engineering or computer science track?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very happy to answer that one. So as I said, the objective of the assessment process is to establish academic potential. And I mean, obviously, we celebrate the broad abilities of all our students, but we don't interrogate them at interview. So the personal statement's an important one. What I look for in reading the personal statement is a way for me to get into the interview. So, you know, if you've represented your nation at badminton, as some students that I've interviewed actually have done, then that's a good talking point to kind of settle you down. So that gets me into the interview, but then very quickly I'll go into fairly technical questions. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, we're looking for highly motivated students to study their subject, and I'd expect that to come through. So if you haven't got anything to tell me about anything that's going on in the world that's related to your subject, an alarm bell rings straight away. So I might invite you to tell me something about something you're interested in. But then I'll go into a series of fairly technical questions, and that they will cover mathematics, and they'll cover physics. They'll cover areas that you've been taught already. And you know, this is fairly early on in your first year at Hong Kong U when we have the interview. So a lot of my questions will be related to what you've learned at school, but I'll go beyond those. We'll start talking about things that you haven't learned and that I wouldn't necessarily expect you to know the answer to. But what I will expect you to do is to have a sensible discussion and to bring in elements of what you do know, so we can explore how they might relate to the question I've asked. And I'm interested in your thought process. You know, do you just say, sorry, I haven't learned that? Or, well, actually, I haven't learned that, but I've learned this. And, you know, one example could be simple harmonic motion for the engineers and physicists out there. Everybody's done simple harmonic motion. You can all tell me that acceleration is directed to a point. But my question would be, well, what about damped harmonic motion? You know, which of the three equations would you modify? And the answer is velocity. Having done that, mathematically, how would you modify it? And you do it by introducing an exponential term. How does that affect the solutions for position and acceleration? And therefore, can we sketch that out? Guess what? You get damped harmonic motion, but nobody's done damped harmonic motion in their sixth form studies. So the questions will be absolutely of a technical focus. We'll cover many subjects. We're not looking for students to get everything right, because that would be ridiculous. I'm looking for how you think, how you kind of approach this problem solving. And, you know, if you're a good student, I'll push you to your very limit, including often pushing me to my limit. If you're not a good student, and I have to say, over the years, I haven't interviewed a single Hong Kong U student that I wouldn't consider to be a good student. But when I do interview students who shouldn't have applied, and some do get through the net, not with Hong Kong U, I kind of back off the technical difficulty. The aim of the interview is not to make you feel stupid or small or to upset you in any way, but to, you know, get you through it in a way that I can understand what your academic potential is. So a long answer to a short question, but expect technical questions, expect to be pushed, don't expect to get everything right, but do your best.
Thanks a lot, David. We had a question about academic exchange. Do students get an opportunity for academic exchange from Cambridge?
What do you mean by academic exchange, Ian?
A semester, you know, in a third country, on a third campus,
Yeah.
And bringing the credits back to their Cambridge transcript.
Yeah, no, they don't. Cambridge doesn't credit any material that's taught anywhere else in the world other than Cambridge, full stop. So if you want to take a term out, then you'll sacrifice the year. If students wanted to take a year out to do something else, in theory they could do it, but very few do. I mean, most students are desperate to get to Cambridge, and the last thing they want to do when they get to Cambridge is go somewhere else. So we've got a very stable undergraduate cohort that stays in Cambridge. Our students get their additional experience by work placements over the summer. We don't have a semester system, we have a term system. So we have 3 8-week terms, and the final term is exam term, so it's really only half a term. And that leaves more than half the year when students are not at Cambridge. So that can give you a good opportunity to do other things, especially in the long vacation when you get up to 12 weeks. And it's part of the engineering course requirement that you do 2 internships anyway. So you'll have to sort that out as well. but we don't do generally academic exchange. And if we did, it would seriously disadvantage the progress of the student in the year. I think you need to understand that the pace at Cambridge is relentless. It's breathtakingly difficult, which is why we need to get the right students. The right students thrive in that environment. But our students, for example, can't take part-time work. They just don't have the time. They'd sacrifice their degree if they do. So we don't do academic exchange as part of our formal term time structure, but there obviously are opportunities to work wherever you like over the summer vacation.
Very much, David. And as Edmund mentioned earlier, some students come back to Hong Kong, reconnect with Hong Kong U, or do their internships here in Hong Kong. So that is one way in which we keep in touch with the students who are on the scheme. Okay, this is the last question. Do students need prior work experience or any prerequisite courses before they can enroll in this scheme? Maybe Alice or Edmund?
I think they don't require any prior work experience. I mean, in science, there is no prerequisite courses, but as Rupert has mentioned, that you want to prepare yourself a little bit more than just at the DSE level for the subject in order not to enroll in the scheme, but for the interview.
I think definitely the same in engineering. You don't need to have worked, but you do need to have the problem-solving skills. You do want to demonstrate that you can look at the problems and you can make use of your scientific and mathematical knowledge. So there's no specific subjects that you need to know beyond what is normally in the secondary school curriculum. But you do want to have some breadth, knowing more broadly than purely what is in your syllabus, I guess.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm afraid we do have more questions, but I'm afraid we don't have more time. So thank you very much for joining us today, David and Guo, who've joined us through Zoom, and Edmund, Alice, and Rupert, who joined me here in Hong Kong U. If you'd like to know more about the scheme, you're of course welcome to email us at Hong Kong U. You can send a message to Edmund, to Alice, or myself, and we'll be happy to get back to you with any further details that you require. Thanks for your interest in this webinar. Thanks for your interest in the scheme. Please do consider applying. 6901 for science, and then the 3 different codes that Edmund mentioned for engineering. And of course, you need to concentrate on your DSE studies or your other IB, A-level, whichever scheme you're doing for your end of school exams. And do very well in those exams, and you could well be a candidate for the Hong Kong U CambridgeTrack. Again, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you.
All right.